I've got a younger brother, 24, with Asperger's, and he's very high functioning, albeit with his quirks. Recently, I've moved back home during the stay-at-home orders to look after my parents. My brother still lives with them. I find out he's been trying to date in recent months and confessed it's been pretty unsuccessful for him. He even got to go on a first date, but his date literally got up and left after about a half hour. I know exactly the reason why, and it's not flattering. For one thing, my parents coddled him since he was a kid because he was on the spectrum and was the only boy in our family. My mom in particular always told him he was smarter and more advanced than everyone else who's neurotypical. This has led to his belief today that he genuinely is smarter than everyone else, especially women, who he thinks are inherently irrational, illogical people. So I know how he interacts with women like me or his other sisters. He tends to say very hurtful things first, and when we get upset, he will then say things like "you are being irrational, hysterical, illogical, I'm just being honest, and you can't accept it." This is like his catchphrase over the years and drives us absolutely insane. Anyways, when he asked me, I basically said, "Listen, the truth is your way of talking to women can come across as extremely demeaning and borderline stereotypical against women." I told him he acts like he can read every woman perfectly when he's pretty much always wrong. This struck the wrong nerve with him, and he later complained to my parents that I attacked him over things he can't control. Now I'm in hot water for ruining his confidence, and I feel both bad and kinda relieved at the same time. This was the first time in my life I told him how annoying his behavior is, because growing up our mom always blamed us whenever he got upset. But maybe I was too harsh. Am I the idiot for telling him what I said? Not the idiot. I used to work with someone on the spectrum. They were extremely unpopular for doing stuff just like OP's brother. They had been coddled and buffered for a long time because no one wanted to risk hurting their feelings. My former coworker was straight up harassing people and they don't work there anymore. Don't let someone go on misbehaving, no matter what conditions they have. Light them up, have that come to Jesus meeting, get professional assistance or medical intervention. Not the idiot. Your post really hit close to home for me. I have a 22 younger brother who is very intelligent, with high-functioning autism. He also is unsuccessful in non-familial relationships and struggled heavily for years with ideals that were misogynistic. After years of hard work, he's made serious progress. But it took hundreds of arguments. Being truthful with him about these issues is the kindest thing you could do for him, ultimately. The alternative is to risk seeing him alone and unsatisfied later on in life because he was unable to cultivate any meaningful relationships. Not the idiot. I'm autistic myself and I hate it when autistic men think they can use their autism to get away with being straight up misogynistic. Like I'm attracted to girls too, but I'm aware sometimes I can get boundaries or social norms wrong, so I always make sure I pay special attention to people's reactions so that I don't make people uncomfortable if I'm trying to flirt with them or something, because I hate the idea of making someone uncomfortable even by accident. So I am 33. When I was 25, I officially applied to the adoption register. I knew really early on I wanted kids, but I don't have a successful love life, so adoption seemed the best case for me. I also wanted to be able to provide for a kid in the care system. I thought I'd get rejected because of my age, but I found out I was okay as I was over 21 and I met pretty much all the requirements. I knew I'd have a long wait to begin with getting checks and stuff done and even potentially getting matched with a kid. I was open-minded and due to my age, I was willing to adopt a child aged between 0 to 5. I didn't get a match for a really long time and I did when I was 27. He was a beautiful little 15-month-old and I even got close to adopting him, but we unfortunately weren't meant to be. He clicked better with a couple and I accepted it. I had a few more chances but we weren't good fits and as I hit my 30s I really thought it wouldn't happen. Then, I got matched with Lola, fake name, when I was 31. She was 2, came from an abusive background, and we got along really well. I opened up my home to her and fostered her for over a year. She seemed to work really great with me, and I started proceedings to adopt her, which took a couple of months, and it became official only a couple of weeks ago. Now, I didn't tell anybody I tried to adopt for 8 years, except for my immediate family. I didn't know how it would work out, especially even with things going great with Lola. I only told my boss about the adoption as it sometimes interfered with my work and he was really understanding. I didn't mention it to my coworkers as I didn't want to get my hopes up in case Lola ended up going back into care. Anyway, I've worked at my current job a good few years with the same people. I'm still going in as lockdown restrictions have been eased and I finally told them that I was officially a mom. They had some generic questions and I said Lola was 4 and beautiful and I was really psyched and one of them got really jerky. She said it was a really shady thing to hide the fact Lola has been living with me for at least 2 years almost and that I'm an idiot for hiding my daughter's existence. I never hit her, I just told my family and boss as I didn't know how well things would be and I didn't want Lola getting spooked by a bunch of strangers she doesn't know. Maybe I could have been a bit more open about my adoption struggles, but I've waited so long to be a mom and had so much disappointment that I didn't want to say anything until I was one for sure. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. What the hell? In what world is it her business in any way? You rightly figured out that it was going to be a roller coaster and you didn't need everybody in the world on that ride. My family is adopted, I have 2 kids from domestic open adoptions, currently 19 and 22, so open adoption was a new thing 20 years ago. My husband and I were young and excited and we were an open book and didn't understand about boundaries and told everybody. So then we had tons of acquaintances asking about every failed parent meeting and every bump in the road. Not the idiot, it's similar to how most people wait to tell people about their pregnancy until at least 3 months, and if they've had a miscarriage in the past, even longer than that sometimes. Generally speaking, there are also a lot of restrictions about what you can share with people until after the adoption has been finalized for some period of time. I'm glad that you have a supportive boss, and I'd bring up what the snippy one said to him, since he's in a great position to shut that behavior down. Not the idiot. It's literally not anyone's business, and you told only those who you wanted to know. Telling your boss because of your working situation was the right call, but none of your co-workers needed to know. And yeah, I totally get wanting to hold until it's official, because that causes even more awkward conversations if your child did have to go back into the care system. You sound like a great person, and opening up your heart and home to a child who has gone through trauma is such a wonderful thing. Throughout our relationship, my husband had told me he loved his dad but couldn't really stand his mom, so he visited maybe 5 times a year, only when there was a special event for family gathering. His dad had been in poor health condition for a while. He went to visit during February 2014, found his dad's right lower leg black, and called the ambulance right away. During this time, the dad was still conscious at the time. Found out his dad had multiple organ failure. He lost his dad end of March 2014. My mill is a piece of work, she's absolutely crazy, but out of respect for my husband, I never told him what I thought of her until she crossed the line. Every time she wants to get the kids to do something, she uses their dad. For example, if when she calls and wants to go grocery shopping and my husband is busy at work, he'd ask if it's okay for me to take her, she immediately says how I wish your dad was here, he did all the grocery shopping. It's annoying, but if her kids are willing to play the game, who am I to judge? But when this happened, I couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore. My husband and I had made some smart investments and made some good money. Instead of being happy for us, she wanted us to buy her luxury goods, take her to the Bahamas, and buy her a car she doesn't even drive. My husband declined and she said, "No wonder your dad left, you're a big disappointment." When my husband told me this, I heard something snapped in my brain. I walked away for a few hours and came back, I sat him down and I calmly told him. 1. Your mom was a nurse, your dad had been so sick to the point where his leg turned black and she didn't bother calling the ambulance earlier. She didn't even bother calling you kids. 2. Instead of providing proper care, massage his leg, she nagged and told him if you had listened to me you wouldn't be like this. 3. I saw it on your sister's Facebook, she took your mom traveling for 5 weeks during Christmas 2013. So your mom left your sick dad home alone for that long, without getting anyone to help taking care of him. That trip took place 3 months before he passed away. 4. She never once told you guys what went on at home. 5. I noticed how little she talks about him when she doesn't need anything from you guys. 6. It's not your fault that your dad passed away. After telling him all these, he realized how manipulative my mill had been, so the next time she guilt-tripped, he actually listed out everything above and questioned his mom, and of course, she didn't answer anything, but apparently it destroyed her. She went crazy and crying, and got his siblings whining at him. Now his family is very distant from him. He didn't bother explaining those things to his siblings. He thinks it's not his place, and I can't help but to think it's all my fault. They say ignorance is bliss, maybe I should have kept my mouth shut. Am I the idiot here? No, you're not. It was your husband's choice to finally confront his mother, so what happens between them isn't on you. Continue to be there for your husband. Hopefully his siblings can understand and they can mend their relationship. It sounds as if his mother has always been able to manipulate people into getting her way. Now that she's been confronted, no wonder she's upset. I'm sure in time that relationship will mend. At least now your husband is aware and can see her actions for what they are. Not the idiot. My God, I feel like my mother-in-law is manipulative, but this is on a whole other level. She showed that she doesn't care about the family. She only sees them as a means for her own self-gratification, especially when she wants to spend your hard-earned money on useless junk. I know your husband said it's not his place to tell his siblings about the way their mom is acting, but I think he really should talk about it with them, because I guarantee they were fed some crap lies to rile them up against him, and they at least deserve to hear both sides of the story. Not the idiot. Your mother-in-law is being dangerously manipulative here. Your husband is being gaslighted into believing that he could have stopped his dad from dying when he had absolutely no control over the situation, and she could probably have saved him. You're doing the right thing in giving your husband the information you have so he can make an informed decision about his mom. All people have blind spots and it's so helpful if a loved one can gently point them out to us. I have a foster child in class. At orientation, no matter what he did, he held this letter. His foster mom, FM, explained, of course I won't post it, and he can't actually read the letter. He's 5, but he knows who it is from, and it's reassuring for him to hold it. She asked if he could keep it during the day. She understood if I said no, but I told her it wouldn't be a problem. I'd try to coax him to put the letter in his cubby when we went to the bathroom or playground, but if he was opposed, I wouldn't push. The first few days he was anxious, took it everywhere. After a few days he'd put the letter in his cubby during recess and bathroom. Eventually he was to the point where he'd leave it in his cubby all day. Then I had a sub. I expected he might hold the letter for reassurance again, having a different adult with him. I called her to tell her he's allowed to. Also left a note for her. Remember to allow X to keep his letter with him. He has a specific need and his parents and I have made this decision. The day I went back he's emotional, won't join in. I texted FM to ask if he'd left his letter at home, as it was probably why he was so stressed. FM told me he came home without it the day before. He told her he didn't have it anymore. FM assumed it was an accidental loss. I found the letter on my desk. When I gave it back, he lit up and said she didn't throw it away. He said the sub told him yesterday at Circle that he had to put it in his cubby or it would go in the garbage can. I called the sub at lunch. Asked, hey, did you have any problems with distractions in Circle yesterday? She said everything was fine. I told her I'd found his letter and told her he was glad to have it because he thought she'd thrown it in the garbage. I thought he may have misunderstood her. She said he needs to be part of the class, same as anyone else. He can't be carrying things around all day. I mean, if he had some reason he needed it and then I, admittedly rudely, cut her off and said I did tell you. She said you didn't tell me what the reason was, so how was I to know it was a valid reason? I said, you don't need to decide if it's valid. It's something his parents and teacher agreed on. I didn't really let her respond. I said I needed to class, it was lunch. He was relieved it wasn't gone, but he thought it had been thrown out. He's terrified of losing it and clings to it more than before. It's disappointing because when we let him go at his own pace, he'd been doing so well putting it away to join activities. Now he's regressed. I ended up venting in the lounge, and the 7 teachers got upset, said they don't feel comfortable with her as a sub cause she may override what she thinks isn't valid. We call in subs ourselves, so it matters if teachers don't pick you. And then I remembered I'd heard that she applied to be a sub because her family needed money. So I feel like a bad person too. Not the idiot. She chose to override you and his parents in order to have control over a small child. Please be kind to the kids in your classroom and don't call her back. Life is stressful enough for kids, add in being in the system and a sub who thinks the most important thing is her authority, and she's just being cruel to a vulnerable child because she can. She's an adult and she can find other work that doesn't involve imposing her rules instead of the existing approved practice at the expense of the child feeling safe. Not the idiot. A sub is a temporary replacement. They get no say in the teacher's decisions. Especially if it was joint decision by the teacher and parent and they don't need an explanation of why. It's that sub's own fault if she ends up losing work because she disregarded written instructions. As for the child, what if you offered to make a couple copies of the letter for him? So that if anything happens to the original, he knows there will always be a backup. It won't be the same as having the original, but at least he will have something. Not the idiot. She ignored your instructions and damaged the learning progress of a special needs student. Those two things are the literal antithesis of her job description. She exercised privileges outside her authority and the concerns are justified. A handful of teachers from your school will not call her, except for probably only when there's no other option. Unless you go wide with this, a few classes at one school should not constitute a blacklisting by my understanding of how subbing works. I, 34, met my husband while I was doing an exchange semester in Australia when I was 20. We later got married and I moved to Australia permanently. We have 2 kids, 6 and 4, and I'm 4 months pregnant. My husband passed away 3 months ago. It was and still is horrible. With my husband not being here anymore, I want to move back to my home country. I think it will be good for my kids because the education system over there is heaps better, but the main reason is that I need my family. My 4-year-old doesn't really have an opinion on it. My 6-year-old is excited because my parents have horses. Here in Australia, my husband's parents look after our kids Monday to Friday as my husband and I both had full-time jobs. So, obviously they are close. Mother-in-law and father-in-law are very attached to the kids and love being grandparents. Last weekend, I broke the news to them. I didn't expect them to be happy, but I was hoping they'd understand. They didn't. It was ugly. They asked me, how dare I'm taking away their grandchildren after they lost their only son. They said my husband would be disappointed and he'd want his children to grow up in Australia. I had to leave because I couldn't handle the situation. I feel guilty because my husband did want to stay in Australia, but mainly because that's where we settled. I don't think he'd be disappointed. I think he'd understand. But I feel so guilty but also angry. I feel like it was cruel of mother-in-law and father-in-law to say what they said. I plan to come back to Australia regularly because I don't want to deprive my children of their heritage and it has become my home over the years. Basically, is it wrong to move back home? Not the idiot. Well, I understand that they are sad and they feel that the kids are the connection they have to their son. It's not okay to pressure you to stay. In the end of the day, you're the one who gets to decide where you want to live. They can't guilt trip you into staying. He was your reason to stay in Australia, and sadly there is no reason more. You need more help, you need your family right now, and you can give your children a better future with better education. So no, you have the right to do what's best for you and your kids. Not the idiot. A word of warning. My parents moved home from the US to a European country when I was a similar age to your kids. My US godparents were childless adopted grandparents and very close to us. They said a lot of negative things to us when our parents weren't listening about how awful the home country was going to be and how miserable we would be. I can now only assume they were trying to get us kids to object to the move. In any case, it had a profoundly negative effect on our settling into our new life. No idiots here. You're totally justified in your reasoning. You have to do what you, as their mother, feel is best for your kids, and you also have to do what's best for you. Your in-laws reacted poorly, but you're taking away their whole life from them and they don't get a say. That's got to be awful. I think you can be mad at them, but you also should forgive them and move on as quickly as you can, particularly since they've had a large part in both your kids' lives so far. Now, if them guilting you becomes a pattern, that's different.